Hi, we're back, and today we're going to pick up chapter 15 for what are called the contract verbs. And they're called contract verbs because guess what? They contract. These are words, verbs that I call the hiccup verbs. And that is, they have sort of a hiccup sound at the end of the verb stem. Let me explain here what I mean. Now, previously, when we've learned verb stems, we've learned them with long vowels, like luo, I loose. We've had verb stems that end in a diphthong, like therapuo. Or they have ended with a consonant, like the word echo, I have or I hold. There's the chi. The new thing with the contract verbs is that there is sort of a hiccup sound at the end of the stem. Now, pronounce these after me. Agapao, poieo, plerao, timao, laleo, or phanerao. Did you hear yourself sort of saying a hiccup vowel? That's that short little vowel at the end of the verb stem. The alpha, right here with agapao, here's an epsilon, or with the word plerao, there's an omicron, the short hiccup vowel. Now, before we go any further, based on what you already have had till this point, I'd like for you to hit the pause button and do your own work of parsing this sheet, and then we'll have a chance to compare notes. All right, agapeso. This is parsed as a future active indicative first person singular. I shall love. It could also be an aorist active subjunctive first singular. It all depends on the context. Epoiesin. Look at it from left to right. There you see your prefixed augment, your stem. There's your sigma suffix, your ending. First aorist, active indicative, third singular. He did, he made, he practiced. Peplerokamen. There you have reduplication on the front. Right here, here's our familiar kappa. And there's our ending. Perfect, active, indicative, first person plural. We have filled or fulfilled. Zesamen. Here we see our stem, there's our sigma suffix, and there's our ending. Future, active, indicative, first person plural. We shall live. Lalese from laleo. Here's our stem. Notice our sigma suffix there. Stem, suffix, ending. Future, active, indicative, third singular. He or she will speak. Ephanerothe. Here's our augment, our stem, and here's our theta eta. So first aorist, passive, indicative, third person singular. He, she, or it was revealed or made manifest. So here's our first key. In the previous verbs, what happened was this. We had a lengthening. The alpha in agapao lengthens to an eta with the verb agapeso. That's the future. Agapeso, the alpha lengthened to the eta. That's the eta right here. We had the word poieo, I do, make, practice. It lengthens to an eta in epoiesin. Now take a look here. There's our prefixed augment, there's our stem, here's our sigma suffix, and notice the eta. That is a lengthened epsilon. So he did make or practice. She did make or practice. In the verb plerao, I fill or fulfill, here's a short little hiccup vowel. What happened to it? It lengthened to an omega. So here we have peplerokamen. Notice the reduplication on the front. Here's our stem. Here's our kappa suffix. So perfect active indicative first person plural. And the omega here is the lengthened omicron. So For 5 of the 6 principal parts, this is so similar to what you've already had. The alpha epsilon lengthened to an eta before your tense suffix. The omicron lengthens to an omega before your tense suffix. And the lengthening rules here are the same as what we've had for the augment. No different. So lengthening of the vowels. So let's go a little further here. So lengthening really applies to 5 of the 6 principal parts. And I draw a line here. In the present, let's leave that alone for now. Look at what happens in the future: aorist active, perfect passive, aorist passive. In each instance, that short little hiccup vowel lengthens to a long vowel before the suffix. And everything else remains the same. So take a look at agapao, future, agapeso, first aorist, agapesa, perfect active, agapeka, perfect passive, agapemai, aorist passive, agapethane. So everything's the same. The only thing different is that short little hiccup vowel lengthens to the corresponding letter before your tense suffix. Now, the second principle here is this. We have a contraction of vowels when the short vowel collides with the vowels of the endings. And here is where we have contraction kick in, if you will. And they follow certain rules. And the reason this happens is that there is no separating suffix between the hiccup vowel and the vowel of the personal ending. They kind of merge together. They follow rules of contraction. So here are some rules that they follow. You'll see in a general way, any alpha, epsilon, omicron, you combine those with an omega, and you're going to end up with an omega. So you'll see the examples below. Agapot plus omega gives us the new form agapo. Agapo means I love. Agapao is the lexical form, but agapo is the form that you're going to find in the Greek New Testament, I love. Poiet plus an omega gives us poio, I do, I make, I practice. That's the form that you will see in the Greek New Testament. Plera plus an omega, plero. So think of it in this way, that the stronger sounding vowel takes charge. And very often the contraction is noted by the circumflex accent over the contraction. Now, there's some other rules that we need to bear in mind. If you have an alpha with an omicron or an omicron upsilon, this gives us an omega. Alpha with an omicron or omicron upsilon gives us an omega. And then an alpha with any other vowel or diphthong gives us an alpha. And you'll see the little note here that the iota is retained as a subscript if it's part of the ending, except in the infinitive forms. So take a minute and hit the pause button and see if you can come up with the new form, that is the contracted form. All right, the first one, that should be agapomen. Now that can be parsed either as a present active indicative, or first person plural, or present active subjunctive first person plural. It all depends on the context, what is needed there. And then the second one, agapot plus ace, this would be agapas. And the iota of the personal ending would drop below as a subscript. So agapas with a iota subscript under the alpha. And the last one, since it's an infinitive, would be agapon. And the ending would be alpha nu, agapon, to love. All right, then we have some rules for stems that end in the letter epsilon, like te reo, I keep, or phileo, I love, or poieo, I do, make, or practice. So number one, epsilon plus another epsilon or an epsilon iota gives us the A, epsilon iota. Second, epsilon with an omicron or omicron upsilon gives us U. And the third, epsilon with an eta gives us an A. Notice the eta is a longer sound, so it kind of wins the day, if you will, when these vowels collide. So hit your pause button and see if you can fill in the question marks. All right, the first one, poiet plus ace should be poies, and there will be a circumflex accent over the iota, poies. You do, make, or practice. The second one, epoiet plus on should read epoiun, with a circumflex accent over the upsilon. I was doing, or they were doing. I was practicing, or they were practicing. Imperfect, active, indicative, first singular or third plural. Poiet plus a would be poie, with the iota subscript. This would be, for example, the subjunctive of this verb, third singular. Hina poie, in order that you should do, make, or practice. All right, rules for verbs with stems ending in an omicron. So here we have an omicron with an epsilon, or an omicron upsilon will give us the U. And that's really the flip side of what we just saw with the verbs that end in the epsilon. The omicron with an eta, this is a little trickier. This gives us the omega. And finally, an omicron with an epsilon iota or an eta with an iota subscript. This is going to give us the oi. So I'll hit my pause button and you do the same and see if you can fill in the question marks. All right, the first one should read playrumen. We do fulfill, or we do fill, or we are filling. And then playrot plus ace would be playroyce, playroyce. All right, so putting it all together, two main keys. Lengthening before the tense suffix, and this applies to all tenses but the present and the imperfect. The suffix keeps the vowels from colliding. And the second major principle holds true for the present and the imperfect. With no separating suffix, there's a collision of vowels here. So here is where the rules of contraction come into play. All right, time for a little practice on your part. And you hit your pause button, I'll do the same, and then we'll compare. All right, now that you're back, let's compare notes. All right, playruta, present active indicative, second person plural from playrao. You fill or fulfill, agapesomen. Future active indicative, first person plural, we shall love. Eplerothemen, first aorist, passive, indicative, first person plural. We were fulfilled or we were filled. Elalun. All right. We go left to right. There we see a prefixed augment, stem, and then we have a contraction. So imperfect, active, indicative, either first singular or third plural. I was speaking or they were speaking. 2, agapontas. Contraction also works with the participle. So this is a present active participle masculine singular genitive. Attributive position of the one who loves. Number 6, pepoiekos, perfect active indicative, second person singular. You have done or made or practiced. Number 7, agapeson, first aorist active indicative, third person plural, they loved. And finally, number 8, poiumen, present active indicative, first person plural, we do, make, or practice. Well, I trust this overview has been helpful to you. It'll take a little practice, but certainly keep in mind the 2 major principles for chapter 15. Lengthening in 5 of the 6 principal parts, and then the phenomena of contraction with the present and the imperfect. Well, all the best to you, and I trust that this has been helpful. Thanks.